Hi, I'm Elias. I'm a research scientist at MIT and an academic advisor to Kahila, which is a digital health startup that's building platforms to support TB patients and patients with other conditions as they undergo treatment. Today, I'd like to tell you a little bit about our actually quite long-standing collaboration. So the question, I think the big question is the one that you see in front of you. Can we deliver a behavioral intervention to promote TB treatment success? And I think the thing that differentiates probably, I think it's fair to say that the thing that differentiates Kahila from other attempts at providing care is that Kahila really views this as a behavioral problem. We've got a medical treatment. That medical treatment has its issues, but we've got one. And if people abide by that medical treatment, then their medical outcomes tend to be way better. If it's a drug-sensitive TB, they tend to be quite good. If it's drug-resistant TB, there's of course more issues, but even there, it's really important that people be taking their medication. There's also other behavioral problems here, like the fact that you have pre-treatment LTFU. Again, a behavioral problem more so than a medical one. So our question is, can we incorporate the behavioral science that is known out there to be able to motivate better behavior and try to use that to provide better support? The key elements of our approach are threefold, and I've already mentioned one of them. I guess I've mentioned two of them. One is we're going to build a digital health solution. We're going to build a solution that works in whatever technology is available to folks in sub-Saharan Africa, which is where we've been working up until now. That technology is the one you see in front of you. It's a flip phone. And so we're building platforms that work over USSD, which is a communication protocol that works for flip phones that folks are used to using because they're used to doing mobile payments. And that's the core of our technological solution. But the whole goal there is to deliver the behavioral intervention, just do it in a way that's convenient for the user. So that's the second pillar. Incorporating this behavioral science, delivering this behavioral science to the user over digital. And that's represented by this elephant, which you might recognize is the logo on the cover of Nudge, the book by the Nobel Prize-winning economist Richard Thaler. And that is the approach that fundamentally we're taking here. We're going to be thinking about why patients sometimes lack the necessary motivation to pursue treatment. And we're going to try to identify those barriers and break down those barriers using behavioral science. And then finally, we're behavioral. I'm a behavioral scientist. I have to recognize that I don't know that much about the particular context that I'm working in. And so what we're going to do is we're going to work in that context. We're going to train locals who are very aware of that context, who have experience working with TB in that context. And we're going to train them on behavioral science and work with them together to build this intervention. That's what we've done. So those are the three core pillars of our design. Another key premise of our design is the one that you see in front of you, and that's going to be really important for understanding which behavioral science to use. And that premise is that this is not just about you, it's about your whole community. And that a big part of the reason why maybe people aren't as careful as they need to be is because they think about, curing themselves. And sometimes it doesn't feel like it's particularly worthwhile to go back to the clinic when there's a big stigma, and when you have, you're worried about losing another half day of work and losing your job, and you have these terrible side effects and you're from the medication, but you're asymptomatic at this point and have been taking it for a while. So it feels like it's probably kind of a reasonable decision to stop taking the medication, but that's not incorporating the fact that if you do that, you will potentially harm a lot of other folks. And so what we'd like to do is get people to take that into account. And that's really our core behavioral premise, is that this is missing and that we should amp it up. There's some other stuff, but this is a key piece that you should be aware of that we're using. Here's Kahila's key features. Number one, it's a two-way SMS platform that sends a reminder and then expects a response. You get the reminder usually in the morning, please take your medication, and please, it's time to verify, please do that now. If you don't verify as the patient, then at this point, the platform will mark you as non-compliant, and in an hour, it will send you another reminder. So long as you don't verify, you'll get another reminder, a third reminder an hour after that. And then if you don't verify, then you're still marked as non-compliant. And at that point, the non-compliant folks are brought into a queue where the support sponsor, where a group of support sponsors, which is the same team that you saw earlier in the photo, are now they have access to this queue and are going to try to reach out to folks and see what's up. Why haven't you verified? Is everything okay? Do you need help with anything, etc.? And so element number one is this two-way SMS system that's a little bit persistent, like kind of doesn't really leave you an out other than to verify. And element number two is this accountability and support that you're getting from these support sponsors. And that's really the core of this platform. There's also a little bit of other stuff. There's some gamification. There's some text messages here about like how we're all doing this together. And that stuff's also important. So these are the sort of three key things that I think make up the most important features of the platform. These features are motivated by behavioral science principles. I don't have that much time to go into this in a 10-minute talk, but you can kind of see this already. If you're just reading the headlines, you can see here, if our goal is to increase observability, then making sure this is a two-way SMS system where there's actual real-life supporters is a good way to increase the observability of people's actions in a way that's actually not going to be violating their privacy, is going to be sensitive to that, but at the same time, you're going to feel like you're actually accountable to someone real. If our goal is to minimize plausible deniability, which is another core behavioral principle, then you can see why these persistent reminders and why the fact that there's no way not to verify in a given day, which might feel like it would be burdensome, why that might actually be very important, because otherwise you'll have all sorts of valid excuses like my phone ran out of batteries or my mom had my phone or whatever. So we want to make sure that there aren't those excuses. And then you can also see how we're everywhere possible, we're establishing a norm of adherence. We do that in the language that we use throughout the platform and in our communications. Those are the ways in which the behavioral science is built into the platform really from the ground up. We, in 2016, tested the platform in a year-long RCT in Nairobi involving about 1,100 patients. You see the results of that in front of you, super promising results, 13% treatment non-completion rates amongst the control group, where non-completion is taken off of the TB registers. In the intervention group, we have a non-completion rate that's well under the 5% that a lot of the development agencies are shooting for. So great news. There's some additional good news. I can just say that that result tends to hold up kind of regardless of how we cut the data, whether we just look at smear positive folks or just look at loss to follow-up rather than any negative outcome. Some additional good news is that kind of regardless of where you start out, whether you're an HIV co-infected male who is somewhat older and therefore somewhat likely to fail to adhere, then this platform tends to bring your tend to fail to complete, excuse me. This platform tends to bring your completion rates down to about the same level. We call it the great equalizer. And I think that that's good news because it's bringing care to the folks who are really missing care. The folks for whom these non-completion rates are really high, we're able to get them to the same level roughly as everybody else. So that's also fairly promising. I'd like to tell you just a little bit about our ongoing research, and then if you have more questions, then I'm here to talk about it after this video recording. So the first thing I'd like to tell you is that we recognize that the existing RCT is small and just in Nairobi, and so we need to demonstrate this thing in a more diverse setting with more people, and we're doing that already right now. We now have a USAID funded RCT that is coming to completion in a few months. It's been about 3 years in the making. We are operating all over Kenya now. We have about 16,000 patients. I think that's about 20% of Kenya's TB population that's on the platform. So in some way or other, that's getting some treatment. Not everybody's on the platform. So it's a fairly big study. It has multiple intervention arms, so we're not just doing Kihila versus not Kihila like we did in the first study. We're now trying different aspects of the platform and sort of seeing if the additional aspects that kind of raise the costs, if those aspects are worthwhile. So we'll try to learn a little bit about that. A second thing that we're trying to do, and something that is a topic of another talk that I've given at this conference, is to try to incorporate some machine learning tools that might enable more differentiated care, to try to pick out which patients really need support, which ones should we really be reaching out to, who might be about to fall off the wagon, and also for whom verification is actually indicative of later treatment outcomes. We don't necessarily need to reach out to folks if the fact that they're not verifying isn't really that indicative of whether they will ultimately successfully complete treatment. That's a second area that we're operating in. And then a third area is to try to expand our applications of Kihila to other medications. So TBT is an obvious one. HIV is another one. HIV ARTs is another one. These are, again, treatments that have these key elements that they take a while, that people tend to fall off for all sorts of legitimate reasons, but that there's a really big benefit to the community. And so a lot of the core principles that motivated Kihila in the first place are in place for these other applications. So we'd like to and obviously there's some adaptation needed, though, in order to make Kihila as compelling as possible for those applications. So we're working on that as well. And then a final thing that we'd love to do is to start thinking about how Kihila can help in other areas of the patient pipeline. Pre-treatment loss to follow-up, following up with patients after they've completed treatment to make sure that they stay out of the clinic and stay healthy, things like that. So we're actively working on those elements of the pipeline as well. With that, I'll pause and switch the video off and turn to questions. Thanks.